Back to the future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine? In 2022, a man missing for 29 years knocked on a stranger's door in rural Ohio, carrying a wooden box full of journals, diagrams, and evidence that shouldn't exist. His name was Mike Markham. The last time anyone saw him was 1997, the night he stepped into a machine he built inside his own garage and vanished. When investigators reached the property, they found the garage burned to the ground. Melted copper destroyed transformers in a 6-foot circular burn pattern scorched into the concrete. No body, no remains, just a handwritten note inside a metal toolbox that read, "It's not about time, it's about how you see things." For 3 decades, the world assumed he was dead, but Mike Markham came back older, exhausted, carrying proof. I was devastated. I thought if I could build a time machine that I could go back and see him again, and tell him what was going to happen, maybe save his life. Not of time travel, but of something that makes time travel look like a children's story. What he discovered during those 29 missing years is why you need to hear this from the beginning. The discovery. Mike Markham grew up in rural Missouri in the 1970s and 80s. No degrees, no funding. Just a kid dangerously obsessed with electricity who scavenged transformers from junkyards, taught himself electronics from library books, and spent every free hour building anything that could throw a spark. And sometime in the early 1990s, that obsession led him to something he was never supposed to find. He had built a Jacob's ladder, 2 metal rods in a V-shape, high voltage, an arc of electricity, climbing upward between them. Standard physics equipment, nothing unusual. But one night, working alone in that garage, Mike positioned a cheap laser pointer to shine through the climbing arc. The hum of the transformers shifted pitch. The arc, which should have been chaotic and unstable, suddenly tightened, steadied, became something almost deliberate. And then Mike noticed something no textbook had ever described. A steel washer sitting on the workbench near the arc flickered, not moved by vibration, not knocked by airflow. It was there, and then for a fraction of a second it wasn't. Then it was back. He froze, tried it again. Screws, coins, small metal objects placed between the rods, and sometimes for just a heartbeat they vanished. No sound, no movement, just a brief, impossible absence. A hole in reality where a solid object had been. And then the object was back exactly where it had been, as if nothing had happened except the air in the garage smelled sharper. Ozone, and something else Mike couldn't name. Something that made the hair on his arms stand straight up. That was the moment Mike Markham's life split in two. Everything before and everything after. But here's the catch. He had no idea what he'd found. He just knew it was real, and he needed someone to tell him he wasn't losing his mind. The call in January 1995. Mike picked up the phone and called Coast to Coast AM, the legendary late-night radio show hosted by Art Bell, a man who had heard every kind of impossible claim from every kind of caller for years. Mike was nervous, stumbling over words. He told Art he'd built a device in his garage that could make objects vanish from reality for fractions of a second and then reappear unchanged. Art leaned in. How do you know the object disappears? Could it just be an optical illusion from the arc? Mike's answer made Art go quiet. I know it disappears because I can feel it, Mike said. When the field hits right, everything in the garage feels wrong. The air feels like it's holding its breath. And I'm not the only one who notices. My dog won't come near the garage anymore. Birds won't land on the roof. Something about that field makes living things want to be somewhere else. Dead air. A real pause. Then Art said carefully, Mike, I want you to document everything, bring in witnesses, record video, and call me back. Now, if you're the kind of person who watches stories like this, you need to subscribe right now, because what Mike did next changed everything. And this story is nowhere close to over. Over the next year, Mike's experiments escalated dangerously. He wasn't satisfied with making objects flicker. He wanted to understand it, control it, amplify it, and for that he needed more power, far more than his scavenged equipment could deliver. In the summer of 1995, he stole 6 industrial transformers from a rural electrical substation and wired them into his garage. When he fired the system up, it drew so much power it caused a brownout across several neighboring properties. Lights flickered for a 4 mile. Utility investigators traced the surge straight to Mike's garage. He was arrested 60 days in county jail. And get this, those 60 days made him worse. He spent every waking hour in that cell sketching diagrams, refining calculations, planning a bigger build. He walked out more obsessed than when he walked in. By late 1995, Mike had rebuilt his system, legally purchased components, better control mechanisms, more precise laser stabilization. And when he called Art Bell again, Art noticed something immediately. Mike's voice had changed. Darker, faster, almost desperate. Objects aren't just flickering anymore, Art. Mike said, they're gone for seconds, sometimes longer. And when they come back, sometimes they come back wrong. He described placing a wooden block between the arcs. It vanished. 3 full seconds of nothing. Just the hum of the transformers and the sharp crack of the arc filling the space where a solid object should have been. When the block reappeared, Mike picked it up. Ice cold, far colder than the surrounding air. As if it had been somewhere else entirely, somewhere freezing. He tested with a flower. It disappeared and came back wilted and dry, as if days had passed instead of seconds. And then Mike said something that made Art Bell stop cold. He tested with a mouse, put it between the arcs. The mouse vanished for 5 seconds. When it reappeared, it was alive, but wrong. Spinning in circles, slamming into the walls of its cage, refusing food, refusing water. It died 2 days later, Mike Art said, and you could hear something shift in his voice. Something between fear and frustration. You need to stop experimenting alone. Contact real scientists, get oversight. This is beyond what one person should be doing in a garage. Silence on the line, then Mike quietly, I can't stop now, Art. I'm too close. Here's the deal. He was right. He was close. But what he was close to wasn't what he thought. The final call and the vanishing. In late February 1996, Mike made his final call to Coast AM. And what he said that night shocked even Art Bell's audience, a crowd that had heard everything. Mike said he'd enlarged the field. It wasn't just affecting small objects anymore. He could step partially into it himself. And when he did, time felt different. It's like everything slows down except you. Mike said, you can see things happening in slow emotion. You can move between seconds, and when you step out, you realize more time has passed than you experienced, like you were gone longer than you thought. Dead silence on the line. Then Art asked the question everyone listening was thinking. Mike, are you telling me you've built a time machine? A long pause, then carefully. I don't know if it's time, travel, but it's something. The field disrupts normal perception or normal reality. I can't tell which, but I'm close, Art. I just need more power and a better stabilizer. Art tried to pull him back, bring in scientists, work within the system. But Mike's paranoia had taken root. Government surveillance, cars on his road that didn't belong there, people watching his house. The call ended with a promise. I'll call back in March. I'll have proof, video measurements, everything you've asked for. That call never came. March 1997. Mike went completely sonk. Phone disconnected. Letters returned. The farmhouse looked abandoned. Then the garage burned down. Investigators found melted copper destroyed transformers, and that 6-foot circular burn pattern scorched into the concrete. No body, no Mike. Just a handwritten note tucked inside a metal toolbox. Case closed. Missing person report filed. Never pursued. But online the story detonated. By summer 1997, Mike Markham was an internet legend. Time travel, government conspiracy, dimensional portals. Everyone had a theory, nobody had proof. And then the legend got stranger. In 1998, an internet researcher dug up a news clipping from 1930. A body washed up on a California beach. Male, early 30s, wearing oddly modern clothing. In his pocket, a small rectangular metal device covered with buttons and unidentifiable symbols. When the photograph was enhanced and posted online, people noticed something chilling. It looked like something a 1990s tinkerer would build. Had Mike traveled to 1930 and died there decades before he was born? Now pay attention to this part, because in September 2006, something broke through the silence. The signal. Dr. Harold Voss, a physics professor at a small university in Oregon who ran a blog about fringe science, sat down at his desk on a Tuesday morning, opened his email, and felt the blood drain from his face. The sender line read, "Mike Markham. The message: I know people think I'm dead. I'm not, but I'm not exactly here either. The machine worked, but not how I thought. I'm sending you diagrams, 3rd-generation vortex stabilization frame. Don't build it, just study it. Understand what I couldn't." Attached were technical diagrams far more sophisticated than anything Mike had ever described on air. Circuit designs, field equations, warnings about biological effects on living tissue. Dr. Voss read the email 3 times. His hands were shaking by the second read. He tried to reply, bounced. Traced the IP to a public library in Kauai, Hawaii. Authorities checked. Nobody remembered anyone matching Mike's description. Another dead end. Another ghost in the machine. And that is when everything changed. The return. October 2022, 29 years after Mike Markham vanished. Andrew and Melanie Carter, a young couple in their early 30s, had just purchased an old farmhouse in rural Ohio. While tearing out insulation during an attic renovation, Melanie's hand hit something solid behind the wall. A heavy wooden box coated in decades of dust, the label handwritten in faded ink. M. Markham, do not open until the right time. They pried it open together on the attic floor. Inside, journals filled with handwritten notes. Circuit diagrams and dates spanning from 1995 to 2021. Circuit boards, some burned, some pristine, wrapped in anti-static bags, and a Polaroid photograph showing a man standing beside a large ring-shaped metal frame. Date stamp, June 21, 2021. On the back, in the same handwriting, it did work, but not the way I thought it would. But here's the catch. One of the journals contained the exact address of the farmhouse, where the Carters now lived. Next to it, a note: magnetic field stability optimal, safe storage location. They will find it when the time is right. How did Mike know this address? How did he know the Carters would buy this specific house? How did a box hidden years ago contain documents dated 2021? Andrew and Melanie posted about it on Reddit. The post went viral. Within days, people who had followed the Mike Markham story for decades were reaching out. And then 3 weeks later, Andrew's phone rang. No caller ID. The voice on the other end was tired and worn, but unmistakable to anyone who'd ever listened to those old coast-to-coast recordings. "This is Mike Markham. I hear you found my box. I'd like to explain what happened. Can I come visit?" He arrived at the Carter farmhouse on a cool evening in October 2022. 59 years old, the right age if he'd aged normally since 1997. But he looked far older, him weathered, hollowed out, weathered, like a man worn down by something no one else could see. What he told Andrew and Melanie over the next several hours changed everything. According to Mike, he did not travel through time, not in the way anyone imagined. The machine didn't move me through time. Mike said it desynchronized me from everyone else. I was still here, same places, same moments, but I was out of phase, like a radio tuned slightly off frequency. You can still hear the music, but it's fuzzy distant. You're present, but not quite there. He described the night of the fire. March 1997, third generation machine. The field stabilized, and Mike, in a moment of reckless confidence, stepped fully into it. No flash of light, no sensation of movement, just a quiet, sickening feeling of disconnection, like the world had shifted slightly to the left and he'd stayed in place. When he stepped out, everything looked the same, but hours had passed. The machine had overheated and caught fire. Mike escaped. But when he tried to contact people, something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Friends recognized his face but couldn't place his name. His landlord remembered renting to someone but not the details. Phone calls reached disconnected numbers. It was as if Mike's existence had been partially erased from other people's ability to perceive him. "I didn't disappear," Mike said. "I became hard to find, hard to remember. Like your brain couldn't quite hold on to the idea of me. And every time I tested the machine on myself, it got worse. I became a little less real to everyone else." Over the years, the desynchronization deepened. Jobs didn't last. Co-workers forgot he worked there. He couldn't keep a bank account because clerks couldn't remember opening one. He drifted. Cash jobs, temporary rooms, places where nobody needed to remember him. And all the while he kept researching, trying to understand what he'd done. What he discovered was worse than anything he'd feared. The machine didn't manipulate time. It manipulated something far more fundamental: perception, memory, and the quantum probability states that determine whether a person can be observed, acknowledged, and remembered by other conscious beings. Every person exists because others remember them, Mike told the Carters. Memory creates reality, and I damage my ability to be remembered. You can see me now. We're talking, but it's fragile and it's getting worse. The Carters asked to the obvious question. Why come back now? Mike said he was running out. Each exposure had deepened the effect. He could barely stay coherent to anyone for more than a few hours. Soon he'd become completely unmemorable, present but unperceivable, existing in the spaces between people's attention. He had planned this moment years ago. Hidden the box, waited for the right people to find it. People who would document everything before he slipped completely into unmemory. Before he left, he asked the Carters 3 things. Send the journals to a private research archive. People who would study the work without recklessly replicating it. Lock the attic. Some equipment was still magnetically active. And never try to contact him again. They agreed. Mike thanked them, stood up, and walked out the door. Unmemory, and this is the part that will stay with you. Andrew and Melanie both described the same experience. The moment Mike stepped through the front door and into the night, they had to actively concentrate to remember what he looked like. His face began dissolving in their minds almost immediately, like trying to hold water in their fists. Features blurring, details sliding away. Within minutes, Melanie grabbed a notepad and started writing down everything she could remember because the details were already slipping. The color of his jacket gone, the shape of his hands gone. Andrew found himself standing in the kitchen, staring at the wall, trying to recall the sound of Mike's voice. He couldn't. Within an hour, they were reading their own handwriting like a stranger's notes. The words were theirs, They recognized the pen, the paper, even the coffee stain on the corner of the page. But the memory behind the words was fading, not gone, but thinning like fog burning off a field, leaving nothing behind. Within a week, they had to read those notes just to reconstruct the conversation at all. The emotion of it, the awe, the dread, the weight of what Mike had told them was dissolving into something vague and formless. Like waking from a dream you know was important, but cannot describe no matter how hard you try. Now, years later, they say the encounter feels like something that happened to someone else entirely. A movie they half remember watching late at night. They know it was real because the journals are there, the Polaroid is there, their own handwritten notes are there. But the living memory of sitting across from Mike Markham, hearing his voice, seeing his face, it's almost completely gone. That is what unmemory looks like, not forgetting exactly something worse. The slow, quiet erasure of someone's presence from your mind, while the evidence of their existence sits right in front of you. If you're still here, subscribe, because the stories on this channel don't just tell you what happened. They show you what should never have been possible. The Mike Markham case leaves us with a question that has nothing to do with time machines. It's simpler than that and far more terrifying. What happens when the thing that makes you real to other people, their ability to perceive you, remember you, hold you in their minds, breaks? Mike's answer: you don't disappear. You don't die. You just become impossible to hold on to. A face no one can quite describe. A name that slips off the tongue. A presence that dissolves the moment you leave the room. A ghost made of flesh and blood haunting a world that has simply stopped noticing you exist. The Carters kept their promise. The journals were sent. The attic was locked. Since then, occasional unverified sightings. Someone matching Mike's description, asking strange questions in university physics departments. A man at a conference who introduced himself as Mike Markham but whom no one could remember afterward. Reports from shelters of a man with deep technical knowledge who never stayed long enough for anyone to learn his name. Traces, echoes, each sighting a little hazier than the last. Each witness a little less certain they saw anyone at all. The fading signature of a man slipping further into unmemory. Somewhere Mike Markham is still out there, walking through a world that can barely see him, still breathing, still moving, still trying to be remembered before the last thread snaps and he falls through the cracks of reality for good. Alive, present, and completely irreversibly forgotten. The machine worked, just not the way anyone, not the expected. And the price was a fate worse than death. Mike Markham found a way to break reality, and reality broke him back.